This is Hashtag Finance, presented to you by the Canadian Securities Exchange, the exchange for entrepreneurs. With your host, Grace Pedota.
It's Grace Pedota from the CSC, and I am here with Chris Jones, Cannabis Xpress founder, president, and board member. Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Grace. How are you?
Good. So I'm very excited to have finally had the chance to do an interview with you because you've been very active. You've had a few new initiatives lately, and definitely stands out because you accomplished these initiatives during a time of uncertainty. And I guess we'll get to that in a little bit. But first off, do you want to kind of just tell our audience a little bit more about you?
Yeah, so I've been working in the cannabis industry for a few years now, although it feels like a lifetime. Prior to that, I was working at a law firm and 2 construction companies, completing my MBA at McMaster University. So I was doing those things and then looking for a role in the cannabis industry, which then led to a big company. And then here I am today, starting my own.
Great. And so your first role in the cannabis industry was at Origin House. What led you to that role, or what, when you were seeking a role within the cannabis industry, where did that come from?
Yeah, so when I was doing my MBA, I was looking for a cannabis job. It was right around the time of legalization. So most of the careers in the cannabis industry were primarily just in cultivation, and a lot of the cultivation sites weren't in Ontario, which I obviously wasn't interested in. So I was looking for a role. Legalization came, and then a small publicly traded company called Canna Royalty Corp, which is traded on the CSE. They were looking for a co-op student. So I started there. I started in a tiny office on Richmond Street in a little WeWork. There was like 6 or 7 of us. At the time, the stock was like $250. I think the market cap was like 250 million. Then it exploded, right? We did a lot of deals in the US, 6 acquisitions in total, and a few smaller investments. But the team grew from like 7 to close to like 40 people at one point.
Wow. So you saw a lot of growth within that company, especially within the early days of cannabis. So what insights or skills did you kind of learn from Origin House that helped you become an entrepreneur within the cannabis space today?
Yeah, I got pretty lucky because at the time, like I mentioned, there wasn't many jobs in Canada, and all of our investments were focused on the US. So when I was looking at, a market like California, which is light years ahead of where we are here in Ontario, I was able to see like what types of products people are buying, which brands, learning about different licenses, the licensing process, which companies were being bought and sold, like where the most money was, right, for someone as an investor, as well as some of these founders of businesses. So I was lucky in a sense that I could look at a place where they were just much further ahead than where they are here, just because I think a lot of the trends that have happened over there are slowly trickling into our country here in Canada. So I was lucky in that sense. And then looking at I guess it led to, we did a deal with one of the first round lottery winners in Ontario. So that's, I guess, what led me here today. But our company did a deal with one of the first round lottery winners. And then I went through the whole AGCO licensing process with that individual. And then I saw a huge opportunity in retail, specifically in Ontario. And then it, led to me founding a business and selling it very recently.
Yeah, and so let's talk a little bit more about that. It's good leadway. So you started a retail store called Starbuds. What was that like, especially opening it within the beginning of the pandemic?
Yeah, so it was an interesting time because what happened, just the whole licensing process. There was a first lottery, completely random in Ontario for 25 licenses. Then there was a second lottery for, I believe, 50 licenses in Ontario. And then the government announced that on January 2nd of this year, they were going to open it up to a first come, first serve process. So at the time, I was still working at Origin House, thinking about just different opportunities, and already going through the licensing process earlier. I was speaking to one of my former colleagues, and we decided to form a company, apply for the first license at the beginning of January when it opened up. So we did that, and then we were looking for once we got the license, we were one of the first 100 groups in Ontario to get the first license, the retail operator license. So once we had that, we were looking for different locations that we wanted to lease, and we were looking for just like a brand name of what we were going to call the store. So between January 2020 and March 2020, we had a few months to look for locations, because on March 2nd, 2020, the government allowed for people to apply for the second license, which is the retail store authorization license. So that's the site-specific license. So the first license that we had just gives you the ability to open up to 75 stores in the province. And then the second license is the one that's location specific. So we had a few months between January and March where we were raising capital to fund the rollout of the stores, looking for a brand name, and then securing all of our supplier contracts for like our point of sale system, our banking, things like that.
Great. Yeah. And I think I remember sitting around the table with you at, I can't remember where it was. It was me, you, and Mel, and you would come in with the business idea on a sheet of paper, and you were quite nervous. So it was great to see you had accomplished that. Why did you choose Barrie as a location?
Yeah, so our first
store?
stores, we applied for, I believe it was 5 stores at the beginning, and then we killed 2 of those locations. Just because they didn't make sense later. But we chose Barrie particularly because of the low amount of competition at the time. So there's only 1 store that was open in Barrie, completely other end of Barrie from where we were located. And when we were trying to figure out where to open stores, we only had, so we raised about $1 million. So we had obviously a limited number of funds, and we were looking at places outside of Toronto just because this is pre-pandemic. We were looking for locations. So everything was very expensive. The landlords were asking for 6 months upfront, non-refundable deposits. So it didn't really make sense for us to open a store in Toronto. So we were looking for areas that were within an hour of Toronto, already had a good consumer base, because there was a store there in Barrie, and we had an idea of what their sales were. So we were looking in Barrie. We found a few locations. We put in those applications. The first store opened in June this summer. The second store was in a town called Bradford. So another smaller town, population of about 35,000 compared to Barrie at about 160, 165. So that one opened in July 2020. And then the third location got licensed, I believe this week in Innisfil. And then the fourth one in Barrie, so there's 4 stores total. That fourth one should be licensed very soon as well.
Great. And what made you want to open up another store in Barrie? Was that because the demand was high?
Yeah, we had a good location, very friendly landlord. Yeah, it was a good location, friendly landlord, and it just made a lot of sense at the time.
That's great. And so when you had started Starbuds, you were one of the first retail stores to have virtual inspection.
Yeah, so just going back to the name briefly. So we chose that name because the group that invested the bulk of the cash in our company had the license, or had the IP for the name in Canada. So that's part of the reason why we chose that name. And then in regards to your question, you asked,
how did the virtual inspection work?
The virtual inspection. So it's interesting because going through the licensing process at the very beginning, it's completely different than how it is now. So part of that is we were actually very lucky, to be honest. When COVID hit, it was very tough to work on any locations. No one wanted to work. It was tough to find contractors. So I think a lot of the stores or people that wanted to open up stores either completely stopped working, or they just got out of it and changed their mind. So we got lucky because I thought at the time that the government was going to just completely halt licensing. Like we've seen that happen in Alberta before, obviously for a different reason. But that was a pretty big worry at the time for us, is that we were just going to be in this, few month limbo of paying rent, paying all these costs, and not being able to open. So yeah, doing the virtual inspections was great. The government did a pretty good job with transitioning fairly quickly, actually, to do those virtual inspections. So I think they're actually a lot more thorough doing it virtually. I've never had an in-person inspection before, but you still go through all the same requirements, making sure there's no blind spots. You have a camera or multiple cameras in every room, making sure every door is has different locks on it, is secure, making sure the windows are frosted or tinted so people from the public can't see in that are underage. So, they went through the exact same list of items that needed to be done regardless if it was virtual and in person. And our experience with it was pretty positive. They did, yeah, I think the government did a very good job of adapting once COVID hit to that.
Yeah, and I think the cannabis industry is pretty fast-paced as it is. So it was great to see the government work alongside the fast-paced environment that the cannabis industry
Yeah.
operates in. And so, do you think that it is the key to increasing the number of retail stores having a virtual inspection?
I think so. The government announced, I believe it was in the September, that they were doubling the amount of licenses issued per week. So initially they were giving out 5 per week. Now it's 10 licenses per week. And then I believe they're going to be increasing that to about 15 to 20 per week in January or February next year. So they are increasing the number of licenses, but I don't think it has to do with it being virtual. I think it was more so on the OCS and having their second facility up and running, just so they're able to actually distribute all the product to the retail stores. So how it works as a retailer, you get what they call a buy sheet every week. So you get a buy sheet. It's basically an Excel document with every product available. Then it tells you like the name, the price, and the probability, low to high, if you're actually going to be able to get that product. So you fill your buy sheet, you send it back into the government, they withdraw the funds from your account, and then you have a set day or days that week where they're going to make the delivery. So the government, the OCS, is the only legal distributor of cannabis right now in Ontario. So that's the only group we can buy it from. So I believe them issuing more licenses wasn't necessarily to do with it being virtual or not. It was more so on their own like supply chain, just so they were able to service all. Ontario is a big province, so they need to be able to deliver all over the place.
And what, just because I'm curious about consumer behavior within the cannabis industry, what kind of insights can you provide us in terms of what you saw with your first location in Barrie?
Yeah, we decided to not go too big on our location. So the first one in Barrie was about 1,000 square feet. We didn't want to go too big just because I've been into a lot of stores and a lot of them I think are just way too big. So that was very important to the success of that location. Additionally, just speaking to customers, like I would just go into the store, I would talk to as many customers as possible because we're providing a store where they can buy products, right? So we need to listen to all of our customers. That's where we get the best feedback. Because I have one idea of how to do something, but if I ask 10 customers, and they all say the same thing, then I need to make that change, right? So just looking at customers right now, a lot of them aren't as, I'd say they need a lot more, or they need additional education just on the products and brands and really what they're looking for. Like a lot of customers come into the store just asking for what's the highest THC percentage pre-roll you have and at the lowest cost, right? So I think over time customers are going to realize it's not necessarily the highest amount of THC that's the best for you. You can get something that's lower in THC but has different terpenes that affect you more, right? So I think customers are they're still going through like an educational phase right now, but over time I think they're going to be a lot smarter on what types of products they want to purchase.
And that's a great segment into what is Cannabis Xpress. Can you explain how it presents a new retail model? Sorry.
Yeah, so what happened was, after getting the 3-4 stores licensed from Starbuds and running that company, I decided I had a different vision of where I see the future of cannabis. So it made sense to exit that company. My partners bought me out all cash, which was a little rare these days. You see a lot of stock deals. So the new vision or model of retail store that I'm putting together right now is a store where you go in. It's very tiny, but very convenient. So it's a local store that you go into, limited number of SKUs, say 50 SKUs, one menu board, and you go in, you pick your product and you leave. So the timing of these stores opening coincides with customers getting more educated. So it's good that customers can go into other stores right now. They go into these big stores, they speak to a bud tender for 20-30 minutes, they learn all about their products, and then once they know what they like, they come to my store because it's convenient and it's lower priced. So I think I don't know if you've been into many cannabis stores right now, but you go in and some of these stores have like 200 different SKUs of flower. And, being a customer, even myself, like I know all these brands, I know all these products, but even going in, it's like, how do I decide when there's 200 different products to purchase, right? So I need to speak to someone. But if you go into a store with, they have 5 products, they switch them every week. It's a lot easier and faster to make a purchasing decision. And obviously studies have shown that when you have too many options, you end up not making a decision at all.
Right. And very true. And what motivated you to build a new retail model with Cannabis Xpress? Like, what gap did you kind of want to fill? And I know you kind of answered that in the previous question, but if you want to elaborate on it, what gap specifically did you want to fill, or did you notice that needed to be filled from your experience with Starbuds?
Yeah, so a few different things. I think one of the gaps right now, just in the industry as a whole, is there aren't that many retail stores in Ontario. I believe there's close to 200 that are licensed right now, but I don't think, and not all of them are open. And then there's about 700-ish stores that are in various stages of licensing. So just right off the bat, there's a lot of cities and towns and places where there should be a store, but there isn't. So, starting off, we do need to open up more stores in Ontario. And then the main gap that I see is just speed and efficiency and keeping costs down. Like, have you been into like those large fancy LCBOs? There's like a few of them in Toronto. Have you been into them?
Yeah, well, I was actually going to compare it to, like, just going back to more stores needing to be open. I'm in Cabbagetown, and there's like 3 or 4 just down the street. So I'm wondering what, like, even as a consumer, I have my favorite store, but
why is it your favorite store? Is it your first one, or?
No, because it's pretty.
Okay.
And there's stuff in there, and it's really pretty. The other ones look kind of they don't look as nice, so I don't want to go inside of them. Okay. Which is totally against your vision, but
well,
I'm a different kind of
not necessarily, right? I think what happens is, say you went into those 4 stores, and the store that's the prettiest is you're paying 2 times the price for the exact same product that's 10 feet away.
No, because I look it up online before, and I compare the prices. Yeah, because if the flower that I want is like it, and it usually has the least like expensive price.
Okay, so that's perfect. So you would be the customer, because think about it though, if everything else is the same, if price is what motivates you as a customer to switch stores, we can charge less.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yeah. And I'm the type I like where I will go online beforehand and check, because
that's perfect.
Yeah, that's probably and so that's what leads me into my other question for you. Like, what is your ideal consumer for Cannabis Xpress besides me?
Oh, honestly, they really could be anyone. Like, it could be you, it could be my mom, it could be anyone. It's any customer who's potentially price sensitive, but just wants to go in and get out, right? Like, if you have a store where you can just go in, like, even you, if you had an LCBO, a tiny LCBO near your place, and you knew you could buy something online and pick it up in 5 minutes, you would do that, right? I think the main reason a lot of those people would want to go to a much larger store is for a broad selection. So if you're going to a special event or party and you wanted a special, bottle of champagne, then maybe you'll go to a larger store and buy that because there's more selection. But for like 95% of your purchases that year, they're going to be, a certain amount of products, right?
Yeah. So and do you think that you would get some sort of data or consensus around what kind of products that community or that area likes to buy before filling the store with that type of product for those people in that area?
Yeah, so what the OCS does during your onboarding process, they give you data and information on what products people are buying in that area online. Obviously, if someone's buying it online, it's being delivered to them from the OCS. It doesn't necessarily tell you that's going to be the exact makeup of products purchased in that area, just because it is online through a different channel. But that's one piece of information that you can go off of. And then obviously, already having stores and seeing all that information myself, most people are buying, a certain amount of products, and I can see what people are buying. So another, good reason for this business model is that our inventory is so low. So if we make our first inventory purchase, that's $40,000, $50,000. It's low risk. And then if people don't buy a certain product or brand, we'll just discount it, and then we'll, restock something else next week. And the thing is too, right when customers come in, you really don't know who your customers are going to be. So
Yeah.
just keeping the inventory purchase low, and then just asking customers when they come in, like, hey, what are you looking for? What brands have you heard of? What do you like? Taking that information in and then just making the order next week that's different and tailored to those customers.
Okay, interesting. And do you foresee drive-through cannabis stores?
Oh, I hope so. I hope
Okay.
so. I heard of one person that might have been doing it in Ontario, but what happened was over the summer when COVID first started, they temporarily allowed for curbside pickup and delivery. So they had that for about a month, and then they took it away. So right now you have to be in the store. Like if you make a purchase online, you still have to pick it up in store. So I don't know if like putting your hand through a window of a store technically means you're inside the store. But I think the government will probably come back with curbside pickup soon. So once they do, yeah, having a drive-through would be very convenient. And
I
then
think so.
even more so if imagine being a customer and you went through a drive-through of a store that had 300 items on the menu.
Well, there's a store like that on the Danforth, and it's literally what you have envisioned for Cannabis Express, and you just go right in, and there's just a menu. It looks like a menu to, I don't know, it's just alternating all the time, and there's just like strains after strains after strains.
Yeah, even those
So
menus, they're impossible to read. I go into some stores and I see those menus that move, like it makes no sense.
I know. Yeah. And from your perspective, what does cannabis, are we 3.0 now? What does cannabis 3.0 look like to you? Do you think it's more focused on oils rather than flower? What are you seeing?
I think what's going to happen is, so right now, even with so many more brands and licensed producers coming online and people getting, licensed people to contract manufacture their products, there's just a lot more brands, a lot more products, a lot more selection. So I think over time, there's going to be people that find their niche of where they want to play, right? I think both at the very beginning, if you had good flower, everything just sold. Just because you had it, not many people do. But obviously over time, it's going to get much more competitive. So you see people, going like, am I going to be an ultra premium flower? Am I going to be a low cost producer? So you'll see people fit into their categories, and then as well, I think customers are just going to get a lot more educated in terms of the products people are buying. I think it'll, we see the trends in places like California, Colorado, Oregon, where people are smoking less. They're vaping more. They're having more edibles, like topicals, tinctures, products like that versus smoking. So smoking is obviously going down. Those other product categories are going up. But I think customers are just going to get a lot more educated, and they're going to be smarter about, what products and brands they purchase from, right? Like looking at, certain terpenes that are in one flower versus another. Those things are going to be a lot more important over time versus a customer coming in just saying like, oh, I've, $15, what's the highest THC you have?
All right. Yeah. Exactly. And how do you think COVID-19 has impacted the evolution of the cannabis industry? Like, what have you seen other than the virtual inspection? What other things have you seen that have pushed the cannabis industry forward?
Honestly, COVID has been very, very beneficial to the cannabis industry. I think a lot of places, in Canada and in the US, they are, running at a huge loss, and having cannabis tax revenue come in is very important. Like even this week, a lot of states implemented new cannabis legislation. So I think that's going to be very important. I think a lot of states that were very against cannabis are now going to start looking at different medical programs. And then the states that have medical programs are going to turn rec just because they know how much tax revenue they can bring in. So I think that's been, very, very important to the cannabis industry. I think it's accelerated a lot of growth and policy change and reform over the past few months, which I don't think we would have seen before. Even just, technology, like we're doing the virtual inspections, that's very big. Like, I don't think I would have imagined before that the government would ever do virtual inspections, but they're doing that right now. So COVID has been definitely beneficial, as a whole, as a customer. But even in terms of my business, like while a lot of people slowed down, couldn't raise capital, we had money. We kept building our stores, and we got them open like very, very quickly. From applying to March 2nd to opening a store in June, a store in July. Like I speak to different retailers every day all over the province, and there are people who applied for licenses the exact same time I did and are further behind than I am currently when I just applied for my license a month ago.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting. What do you think gives other people a leg up?
I think just general knowledge of the industry. It's like once you do it once, you learn a lot. Then once you do it again, you improve again. So this has been a pretty big evolution of, over the past year of applying for everything. But yeah, I think a lot of people just either underestimate the costs and time and challenges in the cannabis industry. And this is something I've been living for years. Like there are people I know who come in and they're shocked that they can't open bank accounts. And I was like, why? You're shocked you can't open bank accounts? I was like, this is normal. This is normal for us, right? So I think a lot of people are just very surprised with how challenging it is to, get certain service providers to even work with them. Even finding locations. Like I spend a lot of time even now educating landlords on the licensing process, and like sometimes I have to convince them that this is legal. Some of them don't even know it's legal. So
wow, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And you're also, I just want to quickly talk about you're an instructor, a professor at was it George Brown?
Yeah, so I started originally guest speaking at Ryerson. They have a cannabis class about almost 2 years ago, I'd say, a year and a half ago. And George Brown reached out to me about a year ago and they said, hey, we have this cannabis course. We ran it for one semester and we need someone new to lead it and bring it back to life, essentially. So I thought, my background isn't in teaching, but I thought it would be a good opportunity to invite a lot of the people I've met along my, cannabis journey to speak to the class. So the class is essentially me either interviewing or bringing in different guest speakers who are specialists in different areas. So I have lawyers that come in who are, they focus on either like raising capital, securities to cannabis licensing. I have people who are growers come in and talk about cultivation. Luckily enough, we had Bruce Linton come in a week and a half ago to speak to the class. That was really great. The students were really excited about that. So it's a fun class, and obviously this too has changed a lot because now it's virtual as well, right? This is the first time I'm teaching this class virtually, which is it's more challenging. I think it's tougher for people who have a lot of energy to get through, to get that through to a class or to get through to whoever's on the other side of a camera. But it's been fun. The class is it's a small class, but it's growing every semester. And every semester I bring in new guest speakers. So it's a lot of fun.
That's great. And what kind of advice would you offer someone that is opening a retail store as of right now?
I think the community as a whole is very inviting and friendly and collaborative. And I don't think a lot of people take advantage of this. Like I'm sure you speak to a lot of people as well, and you reach out to people and you explain to them what you do. And, there's a lot of cannabis companies obviously listed on the CSE. And, I think a lot of them are probably very, very receptive to talking to you as well. Right. And I think a lot of people don't take advantage of that.
Yeah.
I speak to different retailers every day. If they have 1 store, 10 stores, 20 stores, and a lot of them just aren't speaking to other retailers and, just being open, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of people I speak to who, they've either had problems that I've never experienced and they teach me what they have learned, and then vice versa, I give that experience back to them. So I would say in terms of giving advice to different retailers, the first one would just be speak to other people, learn who the owners are of the stores that are in your city. Like they're not necessarily competition. I think there's going to be a lot of consolidation among these retailers in the next 1, 2, 3 years. Like earlier this week, there was a deal. Fire and Flower bought Friendly Stranger. High Tide and Meta, those 2 companies, one acquired the other. So there's a lot of big deals happening in cannabis retail right now. So I don't think people should be shy or not want to talk to other competitor stores in their area. I speak to all of them. I want to know what they're doing. I want to know who these people are. So that's the first piece of advice. And the second one would just be to be aware of all of the costs of opening up a store. I think a lot of people at the very beginning didn't realize how long it was going to take to open up your store. Like you have to be aware of, it could take you a year. If you factor in, you're gonna have to spend a year of rent, a year of insurance, a year of utilities, TMIs. A lot of people don't factor that in. I see some of these business plans from some of these retailers and they expect to open in 2 months. And I'm like, you're not going to open in 2 months. So I think people just need to be a lot more realistic and conscious of the costs involved with opening up a store.
Great. Well, thank you so much for that insight. And thank you so much for speaking with me today. I'm Grace from the CSE, and this is Chris Jones from Cannabis Xpress. And thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Grace.